y'all. So here's to another addition to, basically the series of characters that we're going to be going over. This time that we're going to be covering over a particular character. We're not going to really do showcase for this character. This is mainly going to be a discussion, informational video on what the character uses and, all that good stuff. All right, so let's just get right into it, and then we'll talk about a little bit more in depth as we talk about which character we're going to be highlighting today. So the character that we're going to be highlighting today is obviously going to be BYUNG. Naturally, if you've been playing the game for quite some time, you should already know exactly what this character is. But for people who are new and just starting and they kind of want to have like a reference or kind of understanding to the character, this is what we're going to be explaining today in this video, right? Like I said, I'm not going to be showcasing the character because the character is very simple, very straightforward. You don't have to worry too much about it. Very linear character, so it's like I don't really have to show gameplay on it, especially because he's more of a supportive character and we're not really looking for damage numbers, right? So what we know so far is obviously he's a light healer, right? His weapon is very good, very strong. When the user uses Heavenly Blessing, the users and the team members' damage dealt increases by 4%, so he increases the damage dealt for your team, which is going to be really good. He's a HP scaling character, so increasing HP is also nice, and then naturally the stats of the weapon is going to be HP. Now skills. We're going to start off with the passive, and then we're going to go through the basic skills, and then we're going to talk about the ult and then the support skill, right? So we have his passive. His passive is when tagging in or using Divine Punishment, applies the disguise effect, and then the disguise effect decreases damage taken by 50%, enhances specific skills effects, and then when hit removes disguise. So basically you're only able to take one hit. So it's not that useful, but basically the fact that it enhances your specific skills by having disguise is what's actually going to be the most important part to his actual kit, right? Now, as you can see, I have one dupe, so then the one dupe also does grant my entire team crit hit rate and crit hit damage. This is just always active, so this is really good, right? Really strong. He has a lot of good effects that actually boost for the entire team, and also your stats overall. Now we're going to talk about we're going to skip the basic attacks naturally because there's no reason to talk about basic attacks unless the character is more focused on and leans towards basic attacks and core attacks. There's no reason to talk about it, and he's not one of those characters, right? So let's start off with the first skill. You have Light's Glimmer, and I'm not going to lie, this skill is whatever, realistically. So it's a healing move, but it renders your character stationary. Not only that, it does take quite some time while you're using it to actually use an effect because it's not like instant, right? It's like an effect that is prolonged. So in my opinion, it's really not that good, but it does heal. So if you need to heal, I guess it's fine, right? Now your second skill, you have Conviction of Light. This is going to be one of the most important parts of mid. So what it does is it throws down an aura on the floor, and this aura will travel in the direction that you threw it in very slowly. So the moment that the enemy is not in it or it wears off is where the timer actually starts ticking for the debuff that it applies. The debuff is basically punishment, and what punishment does is it increases damage taken by 5%. But if you're in disguise, which is basically like when you tag in or tag out or you use Divine Punishment, now is it Divine Punishment? I think it was Heavenly Blessing, or it might have been Divine Punishment from your QT. Basically, you have your disguise equipped or active, and then basically you'll be able to use your Conviction of Light, which will then actually increase damage taken to the enemy by 15%. So it's very important that you have your disguise effect active when you are using your skill. So basically, you just want to swap him in, activate that thing, and just get him out, right? Because once that disguise wears off, anytime you do inflict that once again, it's only going to be 5% increased damage taken. So very simple, right? You just put him in, and you just use Conviction of Light, and then you'll increase damage taken to that target. Then you have your support skill. So the support skill is actually very powerful, especially because there's a lot of characters that have support skills, but he's like one of the very few that have an increased damage taken support skill. It also applies Light Glimmer, right? Which heals your team. It also does knockdown, which is not that important realistically. But just the effects from Light Glimmer and the fact that you're increasing damage taken already makes it a very valuable support skill. Most cases, that means he's super flexible, and you're probably going to be using this support skill all the time, right? You'll have him on every team. The reason for this is because how I view it is the cooldown is 25 seconds, and then the duration is 20 seconds, and you don't have any conditions to fulfill to actually have this be 15%. So you're naturally always gonna have only 5 seconds of downtime that you're not having increased damage taken, which is completely fine because you can just spend those 5 seconds doing something like inflicting debuffs and whatnot, so that way you can maximize your damage output. Then you have your QTE skill, which is Divine Punishment. This is also going to be a factor into his passive with getting the disguise. So you don't have to worry too much. Whenever he's tagged in, whether it be normal tagging or QTE, you're going to have your disguise. And it's good because when this skill is used, it fills all team members' power gauges by 50%. This enables your cycles faster and more quickly, so you don't have to worry too much about not having your ultimate aside from when it's on cooldown, right? You should have it all the time whenever you get to your character with this character on your team. Now we're going to be talking about the ultimate. So the ultimate is Heavenly Blessing. So what Heavenly Blessing does is it deals light damage, it's whatever, who cares, and the user applies the Heavenly Blessing effect to the entire team. And when you're in disguise, it also applies the critical hit damage increase effect to the entire team. So what Heavenly Blessing does is the user's damage dealt and critical hit rate is increased by 12%. This is powerful. So if you time all your swap ins, you tag him in, you have your disguise, you use your Conviction of Light, and then activate your Heavenly Blessing. Of course, this is most likely going to be on your second cycle, not your first one, because your first one you won't have your ult. But your second cycle, he should have his ult by then because you're going to be QTE tagging him in. He's going to get 50% power gauge refill for your entire team. So he should have his ult. So on your second cycle, you'll do Conviction of Light, then you do Heavenly Blessing. You'll be able to do a lot of damage because you're going to have your damage dealt and critical hit rate increased by 12%. On top of that, you're going to get a crit hit damage increase as well. And this is going to be the more complicated part on how you build the character. Basically what it does is the user's crit hit damage increases equal to 40% of the amount that exceeds BYUNG's basic critical hit damage. So characters usually start off at 50%, right? So the more that you get, he's going to get 40% of that extra that you're gaining. So if you have 200%, you're going to get 40% of that 150%. You understand? So it's very nice. It's very nice, and that's going to be of course applied an application to your entire team. This is super powerful. So basically, this is going to change the way that you build this character. Now that we talked about, extensively on his kit and all that, he's very simple, straightforward. Don't really have to explain too much. But now it's where it comes to the artifacts that it gets a little bit iffy. I say iffy, but it's not too bad. It's just more so you kind of have to explain in depth why there's these options and choices, because there's not really a lot of wrong ways to build him. There's actually a lot of right ways to build him because he is a support character. So now let's get on to the artifacts. So here we have the artifacts. There's actually a few options that you can actually do for artifacts for this character. Now, of course, as you can see, I have the power gauge artifact. The reason I have power gauge is I just like to have that acquisition to be able to get extremely quickly. So if I'm using a character that spams and has the ultimate skill set, boom, I don't have to worry about power gauge. I will always have it all the time. Like, all the time. Now, of course, there's the other option. The other option is the HP set. Let me get to the HP set. In most cases, most players are going to be using the HP set. So you have the Noble Sacrifice. So the Noble Sacrifice increases HP, so of course, he does scale off of HP. So this is going to be really nice. You're going to be healing more for your team. On top of that, it decreases his attack, but it doesn't matter because he doesn't scale off of attack. On top of that, you're going to increase your team members' attack. So the rest of your team, if they are scaling off of attack, they are going to do more damage. Now, I don't use it because personally, the only thing I'm really gaining out of it is the HP 8%. I use Huang. Huang is defense scaling. This has no relevance to me. If I use Sayo, she's HP scaling. This has no relevance to me. So I decided to opt in for the power gauge set. But of course, in most cases, when you're running like attack characters, Chai, Alicia, whoever, Silverman Bake, all these other different types of characters, getting more attack is definitely going to be very nice for them. So the Holy Hat definitely works for a lot of cases. I just have the power gauge because the power gauge will always work in every single scenario. But now that I do have dupes, I do want to comment on that. When you do have dupes, you have less of a need for the power gauge set because you do have more ways to get more power gauge because of the dupes. So I might actually swap this out, but naturally I was going to swap it out because we do have the new gears, which is the next thing I'm going to talk about. We have the new gear. So let me see if I have one just laying around here. Okay, so we have the burning blessing set, right? And what the burning blessing set does is it increases the user's damage dealt by 8%. That's whatever. But keep in mind, this is also for themselves and the team. So this is already good. This is already strong. This 2-set effect enables like any character in the game. Any character in the game, you could throw this on. Because now, if you're using them as a sub DPS, boom, they're also providing utility and buffs for your entire team. Strong, W. Then you have the 4-set effect. Of course, the 4-set effect, now it's still the same thing relatively. It's like a little bit 2% more. But on top of that, you're also recovering HP for your team. So this basically makes other characters also into healers. But now, if you use this set on top of Min is going to be healing a chunk load, and increasing so much of your damage and buffing you like crazy. He's like the best character in the game for increasing damage output. Mei Lin comes second, but that's only because Mei Lin is so weird in the way that she is built with what stats she buffs, and she doesn't have as much flexibility as you would get from Min. Now you have the 8-set effect, which also increases the user's damage dealt by 20%. Keep in mind, this should be for everybody, like your entire team. This effect should be for everybody in your entire team. And heals. And it lasts for 20 seconds. And the cooldown time is only 25 seconds. Like I said, only 5-second downtime, literally. And it's when you tag out or use a support skill. So if you have this on Min, you tag in, you get the disguise buff, you activate Conviction of Light, then you use your Heavenly Blessing, which is your ult, and then you tag out into the next character. You're also going to be activating your Burning Blessing set effect, which then that means you're going to be doing your maximum output of damage. Do keep in mind, whatever you have as your second character, they got to be a quick character. They got to get in and they got to get out. That way you can have as much time as possible on your main DPS to just absolutely nuke whatever boss or monster you're fighting, right? But yeah, basically those are going to be the sets that you're going to want to use. It's going to be either the Power Gauge, the Burning Blessing, or the Noble Sacrifice. Obviously, Burning Blessing being the best set that you can get, and then the Power Gauge and the Noble Sacrifice are optional, right? You could just choose which ones you want, at least until you're able to acquire the Burning Blessing, which is obviously going to be his best in slot. Now that we're done with the armors, we are going to talk about the artifacts. The accessories, not the artifacts. We're going to talk about the accessories. So now there really isn't too many options for accessories in terms of being a support. There really is only Aquamarine. I'm gonna be real with you. The Outstanding Connection really is the only option that you have as a sub, like as your accessories for a support category. There is no other option, and I really don't like how that plays out, because now it's really only increasing attack, and if you use this with a character that it doesn't scale off of attack, they don't get too much value off of it. So realistically, this is super good if you're using your main DPS as an attack scaling character. But if they're like characters like Seo, they're characters like BYUNG, they're characters like Wu Chin Chul, they're just not gaining too much value out of it. So it's like, well, it's kind of iffy. There really isn't any other options either that can, you can utilize him in a support category. There just really isn't. It's really only Outstanding Connection. At least until Workshop of Light came. So Workshop of Light came. Of course, we've already talked about before, the Burning Blessing set is going to be his best in slot. Burning Blessing, period. No ifs, buts about it. It's his best. And then Aquamarine is like the only other option that you have if you don't have the Burning Blessing set yet. Right? Now, of course, you can mix and match because it's not that big of a deal. So, for example, I'll give you one right here. You can have 2 of the Power Gauge, and then you got 2 of the Burning Blessings. Like if you're just starting to build out, because at least still having 2 set is still very nice compared to just having some extra little bonus, right? Same if you're trying to use him as a flex spot, like for support. If you're just trying to use him for everybody, not just attack characters, like if you're trying to use him for defense and HP characters, you can obviously opt in the blessing set on your accessory side, and then you can get that 2-set effect, which increases damage dealt, which is universal buff. So it's much better, right? So you can literally just slap in 2 blessing sets whenever you feel like, and there's not going to be any issues whatsoever, because a lot of the good effects are from the first 2-set effects from like most of these. But I think the armor is the best way to go. Swap out like 2 of the armor, and then just and then have 2 of whatever else you want, right? And then obviously just keep this on until you're able to complete the full the full set completely. Now that we talked about what sets and that you can use and artifacts like that, because I mean, like I said, he's very flexible. There's not really too much of an issue for the character. The character has very nice options. Now we're going to be talking about stats. Now, stats. You're probably asking, what kind of stats am I looking for on him? You might be like, well, I know what kind of stats I want on him, bro. I've been playing this game for so long. I know everything. Yes, but in some cases, some people don't actually read or actually aren't aware of how he actually properly, functions. Right? So, of course, we already know he scales off of HP. So, of course, you're going to want to get as much HP as possible, naturally, right? If you can get some healing given increases on there, right? Like, just have them on there. You don't have to really get, like, rolls into them. But just having them on every piece, if possible, is going to be very nice. Because you can at least reach, like, 8% naturally without actually rolling into them. You get what I'm saying? If you did roll into them, of course, you can probably get way more, right? You could get up to 30% healing given increase if you get so many rolls on all of it. But it's not that good because you're better getting more HP, right? So of course you're going to be searching for HP and obviously healing given as extras. And then damage reduction, of course, things like that to keep him alive. You don't need anything too crazy, and those are optional. You don't need the damage reduction, but you kind of just want to have HP percent, healing given increase. That's pretty much it. You don't need MP consumption reduction. He's only in there for one skill, which is Conviction of Light, and then his ult. So you're rarely going to have any mana issues, so you don't have to worry about having this. So yeah, like I said, healing given, additional HP percent. That's what you want. Now we come into the boots, and then we come into the accessories. Now, I already mentioned before, when you're using his Heavenly Blessing, when he gives the increased crit damage taken, it scales off of how much crit hit damage he has. So you want to build up as much crit hit damage possible on this character to increase the amount of crit hit damage he is giving to your team. Do not blindside this. This is super important when you're making this character. HP is nice, right, to increase how much he heals and all that, but this is going to be the biggest factor to his entire kit, having crit hit damage. You need crit hit damage. Get as much as you can, You get to the boots, you have crit hit damage boost. Why? Because it gives you the most amount of crit hit damage, like, overall, like, with easy access, right? So, as you can see here, I have crit hit damage boots. Boom. We go into the next set. As you can see, my necklace, I have 3 crit hit damage. We go into the bracelet. I wasn't fortunate enough to get any rolls into crit hit damage. Of course, I'm not done upgrading it, but the crit hit damage is present, right? They have damage reduction and HP percent, so it's still relatively the same things. We go into the ring. Crit hit damage 2, healing driven 1, and then, of course, defense pen. I didn't want that, but I mean, like, it literally could have been anything else and it would have been better than this. Anything else. And then, of course, last but not least, we have my earrings. Earrings has 2 damage reduction, has 80% HP, and 2 crit hit damage. I have literally all the best stats that you could possibly want on the character. Of course, for the one that kind of screwed me over with the defense pen and the additional defense. Defense is okay, but I feel like defense isn't as strong as it should be in this game in terms of, like, tanking. So, yeah. So, as you can see, I have a bunch of crit hit damage. We're going to talk about my stat spread real quick. So, as you can see, my stat spread right here, I have 27k HP. That's relatively quite a lot, right, for a character. Like, I think my Sale has just barely 1k over, right? And keep in mind, I haven't put any dupes into him. I haven't really upgraded this that much. But then we have the crit damage. My crit damage is basically almost 190% crit damage. So when I get that 40% from the crit hit damage increase on Heavenly Blessing, boom, I'm going to be increasing my damage exponentially for the entire team, right? As long as you crit, keep that in mind. So if you have a character that doesn't need the crit, like Choi, it probably isn't going to give him too much value. Aside from the damage dealt bonus, right? That's really the only thing that he's going to be gaining, and that's from the Heavenly Blessing. That's about it. But yeah, that's basically how you build the character. A lot of people probably don't even know that, and they probably just built straight HP and healing given, and then completely forgot that their Heavenly Blessing also increases crit hit damage based off of how much crit hit damage he has. So I just wanted to put that out there, right? There's not really much else to talk about the character. The video's already long enough. That's basically how you build Min. Nothing really crazy. Not gonna do any showcase because I don't feel like it's necessary for a character of his stature. You just literally apply the debuff and go on to the next character. He's not the one doing the damage. Nothing to showcase of the character. But yeah, that's about it. That's the end of the video. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.